Go ahead, Peter.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're just going to start with the announcement that this meeting may involve the remote participation by members either by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency novel coronavirus pandemic. This is pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Sections 13D.021. That's the statement. Hello, one and all. Welcome to the Minneapolis Pedestrian Advisory Committee's Programs and Policy Subcommittee meeting for January 2022. I am Peter Vader, co-chair of this subcommittee, with Julia Kern, also present at the meeting. And I've got the agenda coming up here. We have two main items, and Millicent's going to take the roll by participant list, correct?
As they come in, so I've got you all down.
Thank you. Okay, and then starting off is the Hennepin Avenue South reconstruction project, which we're visiting with programs and policies because to consider the resolution as we passed last year, subsequent to the planner's visit to I&E, the Infrastructure and Engineering Subcommittee last week, which I did not attend. But I'm hoping Barbara can give us. Barbara's not there, right? Barbara,
no, I was not.
No, so I know Christopher can go there, but the idea is we're visiting it here with the resolution here because the resolution takes the design into account and also the policy impacts and where we see it affecting and impacting on our adopted Minneapolis policy. So that's why we have it here today, and that will be the major part of our meeting, and then we're going to talk about city elected official connecting later on too. So I will ask someone to sum up like where it was left on Thursday from I&E, and so I&E co-chair Christopher Hofer is online. Did they make it?
Yes.
Great. Do you want to?
After the presentation, there was an acknowledgement that there would be more time to discuss it in detail during this subcommittee meeting, but the committee, I believe, had consensus around strongly supporting the plan as it exists, being able to add some suggestions, but not to the point that it undercuts the general approval of it. So really sort of thinking in three parts. One, supporting the plan as presented. Two, explaining why we support it, that it advances advancing the interests and requirements and goals of the Transportation Action Plan, Vision Zero, as well as the Climate Crisis Declaration of Emergency, among others. But then on three, being able to make some suggestions, but again, not so many criticisms that it frankly undercuts the general support of what's presented. I think that encapsulates how it was left.
All right. Good. Thanks. Anybody was there at the meeting have any other comments on it? Was there at I&E? What's that chime in? I'm kind of curious myself as where we're writing it sounds like we're writing a new shorter resolution for purposes of for this 30% presentation.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I have a question. When I looked at it, because I wasn't at the meeting because I was sick, it looked to me like the most positive things I saw were changes of the intersections up until Lake Street, which still included the 4 or 5 lanes, and also the full complete unbroken bicycle lane. Those are the two things that I noticed significantly. Were there other things, Christopher and whoever else was there, that because I know when they were here the first time, it was there was a lot of issues. We had a lot of issues. So I'm glad to hear that I was glad to see that they made those changes. And I wondered if I missed some other changes too.
They also added in.
Go ahead, Julia.
At Fremont and at 25th and Half Street, there's some controlled intersection additions that were part of the update that are significant. And then there's also a bike connection. I think that might be what you're referencing towards the bridge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was surprised, but I was very pleased to see those changes. That's all I have.
Thank you, Barb. Is there consensus around our a resolution rewrite now, a new resolution rewrite that will speak to supporting the project, not necessarily addressing any design components that is for correction or anything, but is this a resolution supporting the project and citing where it's consistent or with executing adopted policy? Is that sort of the tack we want to take? I guess I would ask Chris Kartheiser if there's any advice on that whatever it's strategically or tactically what a resolution at this stage should look like relative to those concerns.
Yeah, I would say right now, like general support and expressing that, if that's how the group feels, is an important thing to do. I think the tactic you've all outlined about like not stressing too much on the like details and mostly just expressing support, if that's how you all feel, is probably the best move. I don't know if that fully answers your question, Peter, if there's anything else you're looking for. I think it's a good strategy though. Okay. And actually, maybe to add on that, like I would also say like what Barb said about like the fact that a bikeway being a part of it the whole way through is important. Like if there are a few key reasons why you support this layout over something else, like I would put in why you think this is the right layout in that statement of support.
Just to clarify, the bike lane does not go the length of it.
Oh, it doesn't. I thought it did. No?
No, there's still no bike lane between Douglas and Franklin.
Okay. I didn't notice that. I'm sorry.
No worries. I think that for whatever reason, that portion is not seen as consequential. So I'm hearing a lot of talk about it being more connected, and maybe it is thinking of it as being a longer distance that people might be traveling along it. That it does provide like a downtown to uptown route that would be fairly fully protected, I think.
All right.
I would agree with that consensus. I don't know how much we've shared with the project staff areas that we think could continue to be improved, and I don't know that there's much point in putting them in this resolution, given that the audience of the resolution is city council members and who maybe need to be hearing really clearly the strength of our support. I don't think we've ever had a project that we've looked at and been like, that's exactly what we want. And we are dealing now with a lot of new council members and a project that has had some vitriol against it. So I think keeping our messaging as clear as possible might be the right tactic.
I think too that tying it to transportation action plan or the values of the policies that the city has passed and encourages is also important, just to restate that this seems to, speak to the policies of the transportation action plan. And if you want to be more specific about that, I just think that's a good idea, briefly and concisely, but I think that helps echo our support.
Agree. I'm curious if we want to give if we need to give the context of this being kind of one of the first city streets of this level, and one of the only ones that the city controls, to be being planned after the passage of Vision Zero and Transportation Action Plan, or if that knowledge will be already held by the people reading it.
This is Christopher. I think just to be underscoring that, I think we should include that in the resolution, just that Hennepin is uniquely within the city's purview and does not involve coordination with other partners, and something like that, just to underscore perhaps to the new council members that this is their baby. This is all on them. So, but then to present it in a way that, because I think this is a very divisive project in some locales, and I think they need to be presented. The council members need to be presented with a simple up or down, and we should firmly underscore up. So, yeah.
I agree.
And just to clarify, Christopher, along with that point, also just the timing of it. I don't know. I think of legal precedents, which I don't really know anything about, but the idea that if we did not take into consideration what we call for in the Transportation Action Plan, climate emergency, all of that, what does it mean for implementing those in future projects versus ignoring our existing policies that we worked so hard to design and pass?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely concur. I don't think it's necessarily a binding precedent, but it absolutely is a political precedent. If we can't do it on this project, which is solely a city project that could be locked into place for 40 or 50 years if they don't do anything, then the passage of the climate emergency and the TAP and the Vision Zero are in effect meaningless.
Thank you all. Abigail's on the call too, as Austin and Matt and Neil, Jason, your former workplace and all this stuff. I'm interested, particularly if any of y'all were at Thursday's meeting, I&E, if you have any takeaways from that you'd consider incorporating in our resolution.
I was not.
Abigail.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, I was at Thursday's meeting, and I agree with everybody. I think it should be concise and pinpoint that this is a project that is kind of the first big one and one of the only big ones that can really ground our policies, that the city has. And I'm just curious, did anyone want to take on writing it? I don't know if we had like a plan for who was going to take on the first draft or who would want to be involved in the editing process, but I know we're still kind of putting together our ideas, but that's all I have to say. I think what everyone's saying sounds really good so far.
Thanks, Abigail. Well, I'm attaching notes here to our, we in our prescience spoke to a lot of these topics, policy topics, in our April 2021 resolution. So it feels like something just looking at it that we can, pull out or focus in on the policy components of that resolution, and emphasizing in the ways that we've talked about today, where it's our first post Vision Zero and post TAP project on a major, just a going to be a more major corridor, et cetera, and what it can mean for future projects. And we also talked about it then, like really just like projects, not necessarily just the city too, but we could be a great example for those streets that aren't necessarily strictly under Minneapolis control, the county and the state, et cetera. So Abigail, having asked the question, I could take on a first draft in the next day or two.
I'd be glad to help and review it if you want me to, Peter.
Okay, then let me do that. Then I'll do the first
Thanks.
rough draft, and I'll send it to Barb and you too, Julia.
Yeah, or I mean, I could be after Barb. I don't want to be stepping on toes.
That's fine.
You want to look at it too? Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
It's an open invitation.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to send it to you. Go ahead. Julia.
I'm just wondering, I know sometimes when we're doing INE resolutions, we've done sort of the bullet points of what we want included. Would that be helpful to do before you take a crack at it, Peter, or do you feel like you've got that? Or others, if there, I don't know if we've brought up everything people are thinking about.
If we've talked about everything, I'm all ears and still waiting. We can hear for the next, or for things that come up over the next hour or whatever. I'll add in. But at the same time, I feel like I've got what I've written down. I think I've got certainly a good start, and I believe I'm confident between me and Barb,
Yeah.
we'll have a real first draft. You know. So.
I mean, to some extent, this is such a big project that pulls together so many of the aspects of and things we've talked about within the PAC that it seems like we've been training for this our whole 10 years on here. So
Yeah,
I
for real.
fully trust your take on it, Peter. And then Barbara's yeah.
Just we're kind of getting through this topic pretty quickly, so I'm gonna slow it down. Just if I can, just since you brought up the bullet point thing, if there are if people want to, I feel like I've got good policy oriented notes. So going back to the design components of this, what do you think the design components of this project would be best for this resolution? I feel like at the policy side, I feel like I'll be able to flesh that out pretty well. So, is it the
Bus lanes.
Bus lanes, bike lanes?
I think those two things. I think the plan is to make it for the first time a truly multimodal street through Minneapolis. Dedicated bus lines, bike lanes, pedestrian, quote lanes, as well as motor vehicle. Before it was neither of those things because it didn't have dedicated bike lanes or bus lanes. But this is an opportunity to make it truly multimodal, consistent with the visions and requirements articulated in the TAP, Vision Zero, climate emergency, everything else. And that the detail work on the intersections and the medians reinforce the safety, usability, and convenience for the full spectrum of the road users, disregarding what mode they might be using at the same time. So, before it was a motor vehicle street. It was.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Christopher. So, putting it my way, or putting it what you were saying. So we're talking about a bullet list. We're talking about this. This is a generational design that's going to give us a truly multimodal Hennepin Avenue South. And a truly multimodal Hennepin Avenue South depends on all these bullet list of all these features that have been incorporated: the bus lanes, the bike lanes, the medians. The loss of any of which in exchange for whatever else is does. By including all these design features and saying these are being explicit that all of these are critical, integral to a multimodal Hennepin Avenue South, we don't have to. We said that we need all things. We're not just focused on the bus lane or the bike lane, or if we lose or the medians, but any one of those things and whatever else in exchange for whatever else is taken back, compromises the. We're no longer meeting the goals of our policy or meeting our policies. So does that be the reason to have those?
Yeah.
Julia?
I think that what the medians represent to me is not necessarily that they are what we would recommend, but that they are the city staff looking for how to solve design problems and constraints in creative ways, in ways that we maybe haven't used before.
Yep.
So seeing how strategic and how purposeful and creative and like the level of expertise and effort that has gone into creating these solutions means that's what they're telling us is that the medians do this, whereas the bike lanes and the bus lanes are things that I think we support really broadly.
I think it's important, Julia, to state that we really laud the work and effort and creativity that they put into this to make it a truly multimodal street, as opposed to what we're used to. And we don't have to say that, but I think they deserve credit for that. I think they're looking to the future. They're not looking backward, which I really, when I looked at that, that's what I thought. They're looking ahead, not backward. And that, I thought that was great.
Yeah, I feel like there's been a shift in the some of the language that I've heard in presentations around Hennepin that hasn't been present previously, coming from presenters to our committee. And I really, really appreciate it, talking about how the status quo is not an option. Like, that world is falling away. And we are designing within the real world and within increasingly intense climate breakdown with rapid mode share shift. One thing that I don't know quite how to work it in if it's a bullet point, but the idea that this is a street that other parts of the city will also be looking to imagine what is possible for safer, more community-oriented corridors elsewhere. So the relevance to the city as a whole.
Yeah, I think I hear you, Julia. I can see a place where that fits. Certainly fits very nicely. So. Christopher, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just one question. This is kind of for Chris, and I'm not asking for stories out of school or you to use your crystal ball, but is the appointment of a new director of public works, does it change anything regarding the timing or the composition of when this is going to be brought to the council?
As excuse me, as far as I know, it doesn't affect the schedule, but I mean, there's been a lot of changes with the new structure and new mayor, city council structure and things like that, and so there are unanswered questions that have impacted schedules on our end. So I guess kind of a diplomatic, I can't really see either way, and I don't have a crystal ball like you said, but so I would say as of now, anything that's been put out there around schedule and timing is kind of the current thing to look to.
Thank you. And Peter, I just want to underscore, I mean, I don't know if we need to sort of put this phrase in there, but this is an opportunity to build out Hennepin in a truly multimodal form for the first time and for the future, rather than rebuilding for the past. I mean, we remember the other design was just, I don't even see the point of rebuilding it because it was kind of the same. Right. Multimodal for the future, not just rebuilding the past. So.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well taken. Austin, hello.
Hello, thank you. I think, part of this, we kind of alluded to this previously, is that this street, Hennepin Avenue South, is such an iconic street in our city. Most people know about it. Most people have been to it. It's very popular. And that these folks have an opportunity to really set a precedent, kind of like what we said previously. And, there might even be some political reaction to that too, because so many people have an interest in this area. And it'd be interesting to know what the council has to, say about that too. I don't know. I just remember somebody previously in this meeting saying something along the lines of, are there political interests or other interests in this? And, making sure that no matter whose interests are out there, that the plans of the city, the Transportation Action Plan, for example, and other plans too, are still adhered to. So to make sure that we can test these plans to see if they're actually going to work in this circumstance, because if they do, they can work in future planning projects as well. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, I can try to talk more about it, but that's just kind of what's on my mind.
Okay, Austin. Yeah, I welcome all your thoughts on it. If you're if there's something you want to say more, but that's where we're here. I don't know if you're feeling. I don't know if it's when we get into the political arena, if it's sensitive or whatever. I don't know if that's matter. But pipe back up, Christopher.
Yes, I've read some materials lately, and that there's an argument being put forth that this plan is ableist because it doesn't provide sufficient parking for those with mobility issues or seniors with mobility issues or something like that. I've read it in a number of different forums, from Twitter to comments in the paper to that kind of thing. With that being said, I would like, if possible, I would like someone to give me a nice way of articulating why that is false. I mean, it obviously assumes that none of these people will ride the bus because it enhances bus service, or that they will wheel anywhere. It makes massive assumptions. But is it fair to say that there's still parking on side streets? And is there anything else that I'm missing about that? Because it's kind of become a talking point in the building which I live in. I just had a conversation this morning with someone on phone about it. Does anybody have any guidance for me on talking points on that?
Metro Mobility, they work to make sure the Metro Mobility drop-off point, like that's still being part of what's being considered. There's a lot of people with disabilities who cannot drive, and disabled people, by and large, there's a separate minimum wage federally for people with disabilities. So the ability to own a car as somebody with disabilities is it's more of a financial stretch, given that people with disabilities are often lower income. So planning around car access erases a whole slew of people who are prevented from driving, whether by impaired vision or epilepsy or any of the many disabilities that can preclude it, and people who are precluded from driving because of their economic circumstances. And it also kind of forces people into driving who maybe that wouldn't be ideal for them, as reaction times slow with aging or whatever else. It's like forcing people to have cars to be able to access society automatically eliminates a lot of disabled people from participating in community. I haven't seen those arguments put forward sincerely, honestly. I don't think they're coming from people who've actually spent time with, there's a disconnect. It feels like it's kind of predatory how it's being used.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if it's concerns or not, but I appreciate the way you articulated that, and I'm glad it's in this record.
Yeah, Julia, thank you for that.
Unless I hear those opinions from the Disability Committee and Donna herself, they're baloney. Because that's just saying,
if Donna says she can't drive over there.
Yeah. Well, good luck getting anybody who's blind to drive.
Right.
The whole argument is specious as hell. That's people who can drive, trying to use the disabled so they can keep their stupid way of life. I don't go for that at all.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone's heard the ableist argument taken to its, it would follow that the same people would call for entirely blue placard parking where there is parking along Hennepin, but that never is asked for.
No kidding.
Austin's got his hand up.
Yeah, I think, Julia, you articulated that so well. I think in my summary, it's that increased parking does not equal increased accessibility. It only increases accessibility for those privileged enough to have their own vehicles. And I always like to put, the disability community first if we're ever trying to advocate for this community. What do they say? And then very rarely ever hear those folks say like, oh yeah, we just need more parking and all my disability issues will be solved. Like, no, that's very not much the case. And I think this is such a good point to what I was trying to say earlier, but I really didn't have the words for it, is that this, since it's such a big project, iconic street, it's going to become political. I would assume the front page of some newspaper is going to be like, they're destroying Hennepin Avenue. And really, so long as we can somehow articulate that in our letter of support or our resolution, that regardless of whatever, whatever way people will try to attack this project, we really are trying to work towards the common good of it, streets for everybody, a city that's livable for everybody. Because yeah, I suspect we will continue to hear negative, really harsh things like this too, as the project moves forward and becomes more public.
One of the things, I mentioned this in the INE meeting, but I did actually, I've gone out and talked to people a lot about it. I live on Hennepin, and people by and large are really enthusiastic. And it's just that most people don't see themselves as being part of the street planning process, surprisingly enough. And I've heard a lot of surprise of like, what do you mean it's controversial? Like, there's just this, there's almost a like bewilderment that this would not be what we're obviously doing. So I think what you brought up, Austin, about it being almost the inherently reactionary thing to a prominent street is absolutely the case, but I don't think the reactionary aspect is a reflection of maybe the broader conversation. There's just such a huge number of people who have other things going on and who see this as the progression, who want to be able to bike safely to their job or whatever it is, that they're not showing up because they don't know they need to, because it doesn't make sense that you would need to argue for that, So it's not a back and forth of two roughly equal views in terms of the number of people holding them.
I also think, change is hard for everybody, but if you're privileged, you often get your own way. You don't have to change very much. And so, those are the voices that speak out because they're frustrated that, I'm not getting my own way. And I don't mean that as cynical as it sounds, but I think it's true. I mean, those are the voices that we're hearing, people who want the convenience back in their life that they're used to. And they aren't looking at the general populace. They aren't looking at, I agree with Julie. I think most people are really in support of this. And they're the voices that we often don't hear because they don't access, they don't write to the Star and Tribune and they aren't on Twitter. They're just walking around doing their lives. And so I am with you guys. I think it's a ridiculous argument.
Mm-hmm. Thanks,
yeah,
Barb, again.
It didn't sound cynical, Barb, because I think all of us have some resistance to change, but it's only it's a specific subset of people for whom the status quo is working, and therefore if it isn't working, I think you're more open to change. You're like, yeah, this definitely is not great. So it's almost a natural loud resistance, but that doesn't mean it's okay. We can hold space for people feeling stressed by change, since that's just a human thing, without giving credence to whatever is thrown up as the reason for it.
Agreed.
The one thing, I don't know if this goes, sorry.
No, go ahead, Julia.
With the topic of change, in somewhere between 99 and 2002, Hennepin Avenue had, I think it was a mill and overlay. It had some major adjustments made to the street. So it was changed within the life of the street since 1957, when it was last reconstructed. And that change was a pretty major one, but it didn't completely, the street continued on. The people continued doing what people do. So if there's any value to hearkening back to living memory change, where 1957 might feel like everything was completely different, I would put that out there, and I can try and find more details if that is useful to include.
I guess I'd hear more about that.
There were, Hennepin's a diagonal street, so every place vertical or horizontal street intersected with it, they all intersected like directly, which created a bunch of tiny little triangles of, just a lot of pavement to cross, like super wide crossings or weird pork chops. Those were closed off, and that space to vehicles, and that space was reclaimed for plantings. There's ginkgos and rose bushes on the west side of the street where there was a bit more space, and benches and some maybe service berry bushes, something on the east side. And that there was a shift in, like, drivers had parked along those tiny pork chops. I don't know if it was legal or not because they were so small, but there was, quote unquote, a loss of parking inherent to that. And it's been like Sebastian Joe's was there, and they've seen the benefit of having gathering space. I don't know when Isles Bun and Coffee started, but they were probably right around then. There's businesses that have been there since then, even though I'm not aware of any businesses that have been in place since 1957. It's still like there's, I don't know how long our traffic engineers have been in their roles, but Alan might remember it. There might be others who have that as part of their understanding of the street. But it was what we would, like, if we saw that project now, I feel like we'd be really enthusiastic because it was such a major shift in reclaiming space for people and for community uses and reducing numbers of crossings and crossing distances.
And if the concept of that might be useful, I mean, if it fits in the resolution, is one just conveniently comports with one of my opinions on this, is like, where these types of things, where these multimodal streets are made across the country, whether it's just whenever these things are, whenever the will is finally exerted and executed to remove the parking, nobody, including the businesses, ever wants it to go back, right? When it happens, it's nobody wants to return to the old ways. On streets like this, and I guess we bring up 12th or whatever it is in Manhattan, where the hue and cry was loud, but the businesses would never go back. All these street businesses would never go back to them. They're getting more. They're seeing all the success of it. So it's fun. It's funny on this stuff. I feel like half of us we're arguing for both sides here, really, because we're really trying to save. In supporting in a project like this, it helps. We're trying to save the people against it, from themselves. Against the businesses anyway. In a lot of ways, I know. Anyway. Well, those are so I'll I got those notes, and I'll work to conceptualize them into our new super supportive and cogent, concise resolution of support. Any last thoughts on this? I want to go around to anybody. Any final thoughts on this topic before we move on to our other agenda item? Seeing no hands. Well, the next agenda item is about connecting with elected officials, and I think it attenuates nicely with our first topic. Last I was aware, I think the PAC last undertook this 4 years ago after the last city council was seated in 2017. So this happened in 2018. We people on PAC volunteered to take meetings in association with a BAC member to the various council members, new and existing. I took a couple with Ward 11 and Ward 13, and I can talk a little about how that went. But I also want to hear from other people that I know. I know Abigail took meetings, and is there anyone else here who took a meeting at that time? Barb, did you see Andrew Johnson or anybody?
I did not, because I meant to, and then stuff happened. I never did. I never met with him. Sure. And he's still my guy. I mean, he's stayed. Yeah. No, I was bad.
That was such I was supposed to get together with Andrea Jenkins, and she never showed up.
Oh.
Which was a sign of things to come. So that was pretty funny.
Is Abigail on the call? She might have dropped off.
Yeah. Oh, she must have dropped off. Oh, whose number is this?
I wanted our chair's participation in this at some point. It doesn't have to be right now, in helping organize, to the extent we're going to organize something, a list of people, a list of PAC members, and who they want to go visit at the city council or other elected officials. In 4 years ago, I took 2 meetings. I'll just go over a couple of minutes how mine went with Ward 11 and Ward 13, and are both generous with their time. I mean, this is a half hour, it's a half hour meeting in person. That might not even happen that way this time, but it was a chance to, to introduce or reintroduce our work at PAC. And at the same time, I don't know, we had specific projects going on at that time. There must have been that we talked about, but we tried to keep it policy type discussions rather than, make them think that we're, there to speak for our, specific ward or neighborhood or whatever. Talk about, but to be heavy on the policy side of things. And of course, thank them for their presumed support and let them know what might be coming up in the near medium term. Julia, did you see anybody?
I did not.
Yeah.
I have not met up with my council member in a while, and I know that I supported her challenger in 2017, and I don't think that went over well with her. I did meet with Councilmember Fletcher, who actually reached out to me when I was tweeting about Hennepin Avenue in his ward, and he was really great to meet with. It was, seeing that kind of curiosity from a council member, even when it's not necessarily your own, it was just heartening. And I would recommend, if you do have a council member who might be willing to meet with you or talk to you, or who's receptive about finding out more about, what the barriers that you see around walkability and disability access within our city. It helps to hear other people care about it, and so much of what we do can feel very slow and very disproportionate to the scope of what we face. So knowing that it was an affirmation of the expertise that I've developed being on the PAC, and that I maybe didn't realize I had even coming to it, and a reminder of all of us. There's so many of us caring, and it might not look the same from every council member because the city's a big thing to deal with. So, I wouldn't think that just because we see somebody who doesn't maybe seem to be aligned or doesn't necessarily get it, doesn't mean that they're not willing to. There's just so much to have to grasp, especially as a new council member, that those conversations can be really good and helpful, and it's kept me motivated and helped me also assure other people that we do have elected officials who want to do well by us. I mean, we don't have Fletcher anymore, but right. I'm presuming and hoping for others as well that would apply.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, keeping in mind that we aren't, as PAC members, we're not officially appointed by or attached to our particular ward of residents. We'd be especially free to meet with any of the council members that we'd like to. We could reach out on PAC behalf. BAC has it differently, and that may affect their interest, or participation in something like this. But it seemed to work be a good half-hour meeting in my novice opinion back then, it was that, half an hour for PAC and BAC with the one-on-one, two-on-one with the council member felt effective. They felt prepared. Both the cases felt prepared. One thing in particular was like, had at their hands, here are the people, here's the deaths of my, the traffic deaths of my community, my ward over the last, over my term and all that. So knew what certainly we had some understanding right away about, the issues and what's safety, pedestrian safety meant and the lack thereof.
I think one other thing to highlight, maybe since we have quite a few new council members coming in, is that part of whatever, we're an advisory committee, and it's a little bit up to us to make that advice, put that advice in front of our council members and in front of our electeds. So we have people who maybe aren't aware of our committee right now, or the purview of what we do, or where we can be helpful, the knowledge that we hold. So this is also a time to let them know that they want to be advised by us, that we have valuable things to say that will help them do their jobs even more effectively for the communities counting on them.
Absolutely, that's a good meeting. It's not, that's what you can do for me. But remember what we can do for you. What the body of knowledge we have and consulting resource that we are for you and your constituents and your policy and board work. So thank you for mentioning that. Want to hear from everybody we can, but and I'm thinking about what action item here would be. Simply, I could send it. We could generate a sign-up sheet like we did last time, and just list out our council members, and pass it around our PAC members and let members sign up as their interest compels them, interest and or association with their relationship with the people compels them.
That sounds good.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Barb and Neil.
Are we thinking of doing this with the back this time, or staying more PAC specific?
I was going to ask Abigail about that, and maybe but I'm certainly interested in everybody's opinion on that. But also Abigail's particular, who has who works pretty hand in glove with their BAC counterparts. So get Abigail's opinion on that. Austin.
I see, and I'm a relatively new PAC member too, so that's my disclaimer. I see pros and cons for both doing a joint meeting and also doing an individualized meeting. So I support this whole idea. And if anything, it might be nice to kind of have individualized time as just the PAC, but I also see a pro to being able to collaborate with the BAC as well. So I'm both ways.
I think I agree. And knowing that the BAC is appointed by council members, I don't know how that shifts it, if that gives an extra in because there's already an established relationship with those council members, or if we come across as more free agents and therefore, maybe there's something more approachable about that if we aren't showing up with BAC members. But maybe there's also the chance for this not being a one-off, but we're establishing these connections over time too. And if there's a barrier to trying to schedule with another person, or especially somebody that we might not know, maybe there's just logistically, I remember as I'm talking about it that we did have some trouble with being able to visit with BAC members and getting all that scheduling together. So it might just be easier to start with just the PAC.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's fill out that sign-up sheet then, and then we can take it from there, right? Then we can see if we want to, and it may be the case in some times we want to take the meeting jointly, sometimes we don't. Maybe we start from a PAC only sign-up sheet, and then take up BAC counterpart participation. Does that sound good to anybody?
think that
Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'll wait on them.
Got to be honest, Peter, looking out your window and seeing that palm tree sway, it's very hard to focus. I'm just like,
Yeah, no kidding.
palm tree.
Yeah,
Cool.
Okay. Blur
it's
that.
gotta be a picture, right?
And
Yeah.
Really through.
no, you can see it moving. Is that your window? That's a window, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it is moving too, funny, so.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Anyway.
Thanks, Mark. I've got that. I think, that is going to bring us to the end of our agenda, subject to announcements. At this point of the meeting.
I just have a question. It came up. I don't know if you were talking to Chris or what. Somebody asked Chris Kartheiser. Has there been somebody appointed as the director of Public Works and I missed it at the meeting?
Margaret Pilster was supposed to be appointed.
Yeah. So they have been appointed. I still don't remember the three names. Like I always forget about it. Margaret and Keller. Is that what you just said, Neil?
Margaret Keller.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Legislature.
Yeah. So
Good.
I don't believe she's officially started yet. But she's been appointed and yeah,
But she hasn't been confirmed yet, and maybe that's something. I just thought that I've seen some groups talking about pulling together questions as part of the appointment process or the confirmation vote. And I don't quite know, like my understanding is that she's almost certainly going to be appointed, but that my understanding is based on nothing except for I think she resigned at MnDOT, so I assume that means she's feeling confident about it. But maybe is that a strategic way to get some of these questions in front of the whole council, or to help show what those priorities are? Is that something we as the PAC might want to send some questions to the council to have them ask her?
My gut reaction is that the plan that you all just discussed to like have one-on-one conversations with council members is probably the best way to do it. Like I'll never tell you to like not do like if you feel like going to a public meeting and like saying something like that's your choice. I'll never say that you shouldn't. But
can I say it then, Chris?
Yeah,
I think
go ahead.
Truly an opportunity, but I think it is one fraught with peril. I think our best opportunities is more a one-on-one without the need of any sort of educational, performative actions on a large stage. I think it'll be most effective. I think your instincts are good, but my gut just tells me we should do it in a more conversational way and offer our resources.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure because I was trying to figure out kind of what is going on with some of the conversation I'm seeing, and I didn't know as I was thinking about it. Yeah, I think agree with you, Chris, that unless the confirmation hearing has functions like that traditionally, I'm not sure if we'd make friends doing that.
Yeah,
it seems like it could be misinterpreted.
Honestly, I don't even know if there's like a comment like section of that meeting. There might be, but I don't even know.
Not so much comment, because comment we might be taking a position. I haven't looked at this thoroughly, but
yeah, I just mean like formal period where like you would even be allowed to say something at that meeting is like, I'm not sure if they have that as a part of the structure of that meeting.
Right, and I don't think it would be. I think it would be more like as what I would imagine if we did something, it would be like the PAC, as you are looking to confirm a public works director appointee, the PAC requests that you ask the following pedestrian related questions and weigh in, not at all, but just say, these are things that we value and therefore ask about them. But that is neither here nor there. It sounds like we're not doing that, so.
I feel like the fraught part of that is, this shot across the bow, is whether intentional or not, feels like I don't, whether we're asking questions or making comments, I don't know how do we do that without and I'm timorous by nature, so maybe I'm wrong, but that's I feel like we'll be working with them in our work with them subsequent to the appointment and presumed Director Keller taking their seat. That we'll have all our best input and influence in our regular work, and like I said, with our elected officials.
And I'll just say, like, I think it's really smart to meet one-on-one with council members right now, like, to start on a strong footing, and like that's a strategic political move that makes a lot of sense. That like you all deserve to try and get the ear of each of those people, and I don't know. I think it's a good way to like start out the new council, mayor, public works director structure, like kind of new form of government around transportation at the city. So
would we want to do any of this with the mayors as well then?
I don't know that I can facilitate that. I'll just be honest. Again, like, you're welcome to reach out, but like I don't think that's an ask that I can bring forward or like commit to now, like happening. Like there's 50 boards and committees at the city, and to say like, hey, can one of 50 of them have a meeting with the mayor is probably a long shot. I'll just be honest.
I mean, we won't say one of 50. We'll say as your probably most important board and committee. No disrespect to the others, but just like definitely in the top 10 of those that can have a lot of whatever. We would like to offer our assistance in helping you sort through these complicated things.
If you and the PAC want to send that email, that's something that, again, like I'll never tell you that you can't like reach out to a public elected official. I don't know that I can help you with it like ultimately.
We'll make sure your fingerprints aren't on it. How about that?
Right,
exactly.
Nobody will ever know. I'm going to move to adjourn.
Second.
Hot dog.
So we're done. Thanks, everybody.
So early.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Don't forget, Hennepin comments due Friday for individual stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm
take care all.
Yep.